Assalamu alaikum and good morning to everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Engineer Salman Ahmed Khan, and today I'm going to bring you the content and the discussion on the green supply chain management. Uh, Green supply chain management is particularly different from the conventional supply chain management. And later on, I will definitely will put the comparison and the difference of it, especially why we called it the green supply chain management and what is the actual conventional supply chain management is about. So this video I have made is for understanding and to gain the basic concepts of the green supply chain management, which is imperative and essential for the every industry around the globe to work on it for their industries, for their organizations, for their businesses in order to cope up with the global warming and the climate change situation that is happening around the globe. And to start with my presentation, before moving directly towards the green supply chain management, it is also very essential and necessary that must actually know some of the key points, or you can say some of the definitions before going to that. Now, ever since we started our school, we heard about the greenhouse gases, and everybody knows about what are those greenhouse gases and what it has a relationship with the supply chain management. I'll tell you later on. So, the greenhouse gases basically are the emissions that refer to the release of the certain gases into the Earth atmospheres that have the ability to trap heat and contribute to the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is a natural process, basically, that warms the Earth's surface by retaining the heat from the sun, similar to how a greenhouse trap heat for the plant growth. Now, how it actually trapped the heat for the plant growth or for the planet entire? Obviously, there are human activities which have been significantly increased over the period of the year that has increased the concentration of the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, leading to enhance the global warming effect. Now, in these greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, we heard about a lot, that is the most prevalent greenhouse gas emitted by the human activities. It is actually primarily released by the fossil fuels, deforestations, and certain industrial process. There are other gases as well, which is methane, which is actually released during the production and transportation of the coal, oil, and the natural gases, and also nitrous oxide, which is emitted from the agriculture and the industrial activities as well as from the combustion of the fossil fuels and the solid waste. Now, moving to the next slide, we heard this about CO2 emissions. CO2 emission is referred to the release of the carbon dioxide, as we discussed earlier while discussing about the basic definition of the greenhouse gas. While CO2 is naturally occurring and playing a crucial role in regulating the Earth's temperature by trapping the heat from the sun, which is also called the greenhouse effect, as we discussed earlier. These rapid increase in the CO2 level actually creating and causing the increase in the global warming and the climate change. Now, the factors and the impact of the CO2 emissions on the planet and around the globe are fossil fuel combustions. Now, the fossil fuel combustions are, we have seen, they are mostly emitted from the industry, from the automotive as well. When before we don't have any EV vehicles, actually it comes from burning of the coal, oil, and the natural gases for the energy productions, as well as what we say is that the CO2 emissions actually has enhanced the greenhouse effect as in my previous slide I discussed about it. Because of that increase in the CO2 emissions, there is a rising global temperature. When we talk about the rising global temperature, it means that it leads to the various environmental impacts, including melting, the ice caps, rising sea levels, more frequent and severe weather events, torrential rains, and shifts in the ecosystems and the habitats. Now, the screen patterns could be in form of the hurricane, torrential rains, devastating floods, as we have seen. Um, as I am from Pakistan, so for the last 20 years, my country has been affected badly from these global warming. And we actually have maintained and make a national action plan for it, for which I will discuss about it in my other sessions as well. Now, what impact it actually causing on the human health is also very concerning. Since the global ecosystem is now at risk, it actually threatening the biodiversity and put the balance of our planet ecosystem at the risk. Now, the global innovation for reducing the CO2 emissions, what steps are now being taken? Uh, these steps basically were discussed and among the stakeholders of the different countries, members of the United Nations, and those who are really caring about it, that what steps could be taken to reduce the CO2 emissions. The number one steps adopted by different countries and it is successfully implemented is the adoption of the cleaner and sustainable energy sources like we have a solar, wind, hydropower. And secondly, adoption of the latest technologies while doing green manufacturing from the conventional manufacturing like artificial intelligence, IoT, carbon capture technology, any technologies which can emit less carbon emissions or less carbon footprints. Rules and regulations, frameworks, legal works in order to address the CO2 emissions, setting up the benchmarks for every company, every industry. So these projects can include reforestations, renewable energy initiatives, and the methane capture from the landfills. And these all scenarios has been addressed in one of the conference, which is actually coming in my next slide. So before talking about that slide, there is one other key terminology we use, which is actually called the carbon footprints. Carbon footprints is a measure of total greenhouse gas emissions, specifically carbon dioxide and other carbon compounds associated with a particular individual, organization, event, product, or the activity. The goal of assessing a carbon footprint is to understand the impact on the climate change and to find the ways to reduce it. To measure carbon footprints, you need to calculate the emissions associated with each of the three scopes. There are also tools and the methodologies which are necessaries and imperative to address these factors while you are working towards the green supply chain. So these carbon footprints are actually divided into the three scopes. And scope number one is about the direct emissions, emissions which are direct from the activities of the organizations or under their control, including fuel combustions such as gas boiler, fleet vehicles, air conditioning, leakages, energy production, etc. The second one is that indirect emissions correspond to the indirect emissions from electricity purchased and used by the organizations. Now, to clarify or to elaborate more, scope number one emissions are direct, which are emitted from the industry. And that could be due to the fuel combustions, due to any industrial operation which are emitting smoke or any manufacturing process which are producing more carbon footprints. And scope 2 emissions are about the indirect emissions, energy which we purchase directly from the energy producers or independent power producers. And scope 3 is about the indirect emissions, and this emissions actually reflects and comes in the green supply chain management. It actually includes the transportation and distribution emission generated by these factors, warehousing, wastages, and generated in the operations, and upstream activities, downstream activities, capital goods, the inventory, logistics, and the manufacturings as well. And of course, the inbound and outbound transportations, the emission generated by them. So these are basically the carbon footprints classification or divisions. So when we talked about supply chain, green supply chain management, our prime focus should be on the scope 3 because it actually involves every circle that is actually directly linked with your business. Now, the agreement which actually I was talking about in my previous slides is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement, which was actually signed among the countries on 12 December 2015. And according to that, and the reason this agreement came into the force is due to the fact that the increase of the global warming, which actually threatens the human life as well as has created a devastating impact on the agricultural economy of the country. Since it actually occurred fastly, so we realized that there should be an agreement in between the countries. And that agreement actually, one of the key point of that agreement is that, or the key factor of that agreement, or is that all the countries agreed to work to limit the global temperature rise to well before 2 degrees Celsius, and given the grave risk to strive for 1.5 degrees Celsius. It's mean that every country, every member of the signing agreement should actually work toward reducing the climate below 2 degrees Celsius. And for that, every country has to make their national action plans. And that national action plans and their work should be addressed in the conference of the parties. Now, what were the impacts of the Paris Agreement in the supply chain? Paris Agreement actually encouraged the green supply chain practices among the countries. It actually encouraged the countries to adopt these practices, which include reducing the emissions, conserving the resources, and promoting the sustainable sourcing and sustainable supply chain in terms of energy, in terms of your manufacturing, in terms of your warehousing, logistics, and other things. It actually encourages and motivates to minimize the carbon footprint, set a benchmark so that companies can set their standards. It actually encourage and provide direct investment in the cleaner technologies. Companies can invest under these agreement can invest in technology upgrades and innovations that can reduce the emissions, such as the electrical vehicles, renewable energy sources, and advanced data analytics for supply chain optimization. The companies and the many companies of the automotive industries has already developed the electric vehicles, and many companies have started to purchase that into their fleet, or they have actually searching or sourcing those vendors which are providing the EV vehicles in order to fulfill their objective of the green supply chain practices. Now, what is the green supply chain management? Now, we should come to our actual point. I hope you actually clarified, you get clarification, you get the understanding of the basic definitions which we heard about it, and it was, necessary and essential to discuss before moving towards the green supply chain management definitions and their structure. So green supply chain practices incorporate sustainability concepts into the traditional supply chain. Green supply chain management consisting of the purchase functions involvement in the activities that include reduction, recycling, reuse, and the substitution of the material. So, in short, green supply chain management is the process of integrating environmental and the social consideration into all aspects of the supply chain management, from product design to manufacturing to distribution to end of the life management, end-to-end process, and then reusing it for remanufacturing. So this is the definition of the green supply chain management, and the framework of it is here in my video of the procurement management. Over there, I discuss about the triple bottom lines concept, and that triple bottom line concept actually talks about the environmental performances, the economic performances, and the social performances. When we talk about environmental performance, it's mean that companies should adopt the green supply chain conceptual frameworks. So this is the framework of the entire green supply chain management, and I told you that the factors which actually influence are uh, the suppliers. You need to actually work on a lot of the suppliers which are focusing on which are adhered to the green supply chain management practices, or they have such facilities which are focusing on the environmental management systems. So these are you can see from if you see the section of the practices, there is a supplier. You do the green purchasing or procurement. You select the suppliers, the green suppliers, and from then you actually purchase the green eco-friendly material. And after that, you produce that material for your product, for your manufacturing on the machines reducing, which are generating less carbon footprints. And after that, you actually distribute your product through the logistics, through your fleet, or through your third-party logistics, which have the fleet of the transportations, which are generating less carbon footprints, and those could be electric vehicles. And after that, you do its sales and marketing. You promote the green products and the building green awareness programs. When your customers actually use that, and after the particular life cycle got finished, it actually got reversed, sent back to the companies to reuse, to recycle that raw material and to generate that product again. Now, what actually it actually impacts further on the company sustainable performance in terms of the environmental performance. You reduce the emission, waste, and resource consumptions. You do good sales, cost efficiently, innovations, and competitive advantage over your other competitors. And social performance is that it actually gives put an impact of clean and sustainable environment, which actually puts good health impact on the human being. Now, the influential factors I also mentioned about it, that the barriers or the challenges for these green supply chain practices are always available. It could be in form of the suppliers. You need to find out the suppliers who are actually trying to find out who are actually focusing on the environmental management systems. And for that reason, you need to develop those suppliers. If they are not available in your country, and you don't want to do the import of the product, and you want to focus on the supplier development. So the success factor is about involving all the key stakeholders and to engage with your key stakeholders, either they are from industry or outside, or they are part of your governments or administration and other things. So this is basically the conceptual frameworks of the green supply chain management. Now, categories of the green supply chain management are the product eco design, green procurement and purchasing. If I talk about product eco design, it means designing product with a minimal environmental impact and have a greater durability and produce based on the best energy efficient products. And obviously, it will be done when you have a green procurement or green purchasing. You select those suppliers which are following the environmental management systems, and you actually collaborate with the suppliers based on the supplier relationship management. You do their evaluation and you restrict them to follow their scope of work as per your KPI. And then you also adopt the green manufacturing technologies in your company, in your industry, to produce that goods which can actually minimize the waste, emission reduction, energy conservation could be less. And of course, that technology should run based on the cleaner technology in order to reduce the scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. Now there is after called green inventory management. The green inventory management is about reducing the overstocking. You must have the sustainable packaging, and obviously it actually connects with the green procurement, because green inventory management, you need to calculate the carbon footprints. So carbon footprints has to be actually provided. That data should be provided by the procurement, because procurement is actually sourcing such suppliers who are following these frameworks. So if these materials are not being procured based on your framework, then of course you cannot actually cover the green inventory management practices. And of course, the green warehouse and distribution is about that your facility should be energy efficient, and of course the for you also have forklifters in your warehouse facilities, which are used for placing the goods on the bins. So that forklifter should also come up with or must be, amend or strategically change for replace by adopting the EV forklifters, which actually comes in the green logistic and the transportation. When you actually distribute your product, you must have the fuel efficient transportation, and you do the route optimization based upon the artificial intelligence. And after that, when that product actually received to your customer through the sales and marketing, it's actually discarded for, or you can say for the reuse, for recycling and recovery of the product. Now, come to each and every green procurement and purchasing slide to elaborate you more in detail that green procurement is about uh, procuring goods and the services for the organization, considering the environmental area, such as the energy efficiency, reduce emissions, minimal waste, and responsible resource. Organizations normally, those organizations who are working towards the green procurement under the banner of the green supply chain practices, they work with the supplier who prioritize sustainability in their operation, sourcing, and production. So for the suppliers, it is very essential and very, it is actually a kind of important factor to convert that facility into the sustainability, into the frameworks of the green supply chain practices. So considering the entire life cycle of the product and the surface from production to disposal, this helps green procurement in understanding and minimizing the overall environmental impact. So you have to engage with the suppliers, customers, and other stakeholders to collaboratively work on sustainability initiatives and create a shared goal. So this is about the green procurement and purchasing. Now, what is the green manufacturing? Green manufacturing is the practice of manufacturing a product in a way that minimizes the environmental impact. It actually includes installing the solar panels, wind turbines on the roof, factory roof, or purchasing renewable energy from the utility companies, or you wanted to have your own renewable energy sources in your company. It can be done by installing pollution control equipments. Now, this means that in your factory and your industry, you must have such fume extraction systems which could be used to control the pollutions, to refill, or you can say refilter the fumes into the environmental friendly air, refiltering the wastewater, and also you must have some uh, process in your industry where there is a need of the water, especially in the steel industry, textile industry. You must have the refiltering techniques or refiltering structure that could actually reduce investing the water, and the phenomena could be in form of that you use the wastewater for your reusing purpose, so that that cycle could be continue and you avoid to use excess amount of the water. In this way you can conserve the water. For green manufacturing, the recycled material can be used in variety of products such as paper, plastic, and the metals and other things. Now, the green warehouse management is about practicing of the managing a warehouse in a way that reduces its environmental impact. So, um, in global supply chain, warehouse produce environmental pollution mostly from heating, cooling, and lighting. It means the HVAC systems in the warehouse are not energy efficient and they are conventional. They are actually taking more energy. So it can be further implemented by using the energy efficient resource for the lighting, transportation for like forklifter, which actually I mentioned in my previous slide. And further implementing of the WMS systems, a way to optimize the inventory level in the warehouse for the tracking and the storages. Further reducing the waste and dead inventory from the warehouse is also could impact towards successful efficient operation for lower impact for achieving the sustainable future and enhance the compliance and sustainability. So next thing is green inventory management. Obviously, this is also the part of the warehouse management. So in my previous slide, I mentioned that in green inventory management, the pure economic focus traditionally measures in terms of the cost. It is which is actually complemented with the environmental aspect, typically made in terms of the emissions. Now it has the calculation which actually I will try to bring in my other slide. Supply chain emissions associated with inventory management may associated with the ordering items that include producing and transportation. Holding cost or holding items could also increase the inventory. Emission associated with holding items in stock can be come from the energy consumption, transportation, and the fuel. Now, these emissions can be reduced by reducing the inventory level, sourcing material from such suppliers who are following the environmental management practices, and have the HVAC systems better. Now, this part is green logistic and transportation. At the strategic level, green logistic objectives are the selection of the green logistic providers. If you have the third-party logistic providers, if you have your own fleet, you can also purchase these green transportation fleets and the green distribution strategies. At the operation level, the green logistic focus on ensuring the greening route, delivering schedule, and efficient inventory management. Now it actually also optimizes the route with the help of the AI and other tools and techniques. So in order to meditate and lessen the adverse environmental impact of the logistic and the transportation, companies can adopt numerous green logistic practices by selecting the green transportation modes and the green facility management. Now, reverse logistic in supply chain is a critical component of the green supply chain management and focus on the management of product returning, recycling, remanufacturing, and the handling of the end product. It basically involves moving goods from their final destination back to the manufacturer or another location for the purpose of returning, remanufacturing of the product. The goal of reverse logistic within the green supply chain is to reduce waste, minimize environmental impact, and promote the sustainability and minimize the waste. So these reverse logistic concept, which I have seen so far in my career in the steel industry, where are tons of the steels which has been already been used through and comes from the ship breaking, from the different, from the cars parts which has been obsoleted. They are reused and they are being remelt, reheated for generating the steel again. So this is reverse logistic concept I have seen in the steel industry. Now, what are the tools and techniques to measure these things in the green supply chain? It is, also essential and imperative to talk about. Uh, Most of you have heard about the life cycle assessment while talking about the green supply chain or the sustainability, or you can say that carbon footprints. Now, this tool is the object of the study of using this tool is for the product or the services, and its scale and the scope is for the entire life cycle. It actually could be applied on many substances, and basis for comparisons are the function of the product or the services. Its basic elements are the mass balance, multimedia models, and effect assessments of any material or the raw material or the product. Another is the substantial flow analysis. These tools are used for analyzing and studying about the polluting substance, and it has the scale or the scope of substance cycle, original or the global cycle. Other one is the risk assessment. Risk assessment is done for the installation while you are doing an installation or the project. So these tools are used, and actually it used for highlighting or studying the maximum level of the risk involves in any substance, especially the chemical substances. And then you do the material flow analysis for the raw material or the compound. Uh, and then the carbon footprints, these are used by the companies or the product functions in order to measure the product activity or the company's KPIs. And then the water footprints, and last one is that to tell you about the water footprints, these are basically done on the water consumption and the water related exposures. And the last one is the environmental impact assessment, which is which covering almost all of these tools and important for any industry to get the certifications of that or the country. Now, to conclude, we are moving towards the conclusion. And to conclude that my presentation, my session, the basic difference between the green supply chain and conventional supply chain management, which actually I talked about earlier that I will talk about later, is that the primary object of the green supply chain management is actually it balance economic, environmental, and the social sustainability. While the objective of the conventional supply chain management is minimizing cost, maximizing the profit and the efficiency. If we talk about the green procurement, it's mean in terms of the green supply chain, is that the green procurement focused on suppliers which are following the environmental management practices, while conventional supply chain focus on price and the supplier performance. Supplier performance in the green supply chain is about measuring its performance in terms of the legal frameworks and according to the ISO 14001 environmental management system practice. In terms of the manufacturing, green supply chain talks about technologies which are producing less wastages and low carbon techniques and energy efficient, while conventional supply chain management talks about maximum production efficiency. In terms of warehousing, green supply chain management talks about the energy efficient HVAC systems, while conventional supply chain talks about storage efficiency. In terms of transportation and logistics, that talks about the green supply chain talks about the route optimization. There must be electrical vehicles, alternative fuels, while conventional supply chain talks about fastest and lowest cost transportation. Packaging could be recycled, reusable, and minimal packaging. In the green supply chain management, while conventional supply chain management talks about cost-effective packaging. If we talk about waste management, green supply chain management talks about 4 Rs, which mean you must have, um, you should actually focus on producing such product which can be reduced, reuse, recycle, and recover. While conventional supply chain management talks about disposal of the waste, reverse logistics is like product return, repair, refurbishment, remanufacturing, and recycling. While conventional supply chain has no any concept of that, they have limited product returns. Supplier selection, as I already told you, that explain very briefly that it talks about environmental certifications such as ISO 14001, while conventional supply chain talks about cost, quality, and the delivery. Performance KPI could be based upon the carbon footprint, energy consumptions, and the ESG performances, while performance indicators in the conventional supply chain could be based on cost, lead time, inventory. Long-term strategy is competitive advantage through the sustainability and the circular economics. And in the green supply chain, while in the conventional supply chain, it focuses on the competitive advantage through the efficiency. Regulatory compliance in the green supply chain, it actually exceeds environmental regulation, environment, and sustainability standards, while conventional supply chains actually talks about and focus on meeting the basic regulations. So this is the difference between the green supply chain management and the conventional supply chain management based upon the aspect which actually I have mentioned. And the conclusion here is that uh, conventional supply chain management focus primarily on the economic performance by minimizing the cost and maximizing the operational efficiency, while green supply chain management integrates the environmental and the social sustainability into every stage of the supply chain, creating long-term value for the business, society, and the environment. So this is about my presentation. This is about my session for today for the green supply chain management. I hope you liked my session and you have learned the key insightful sessions about the green supply chain management, the key terminologies, the definitions, the concept of the green supply chain management, the basic difference between the green supply chain management and the conventional supply chain management, um, the Paris agreements, and the other things which are essential for the companies in order to focus, in order to follow the green supply chain practices. So let's build efficient supply chain, sustainability, and resilient supply chain together. And please do subscribe my channel if you like, and so that it will actually motivate me to create more value in driving innovation for building a better future for the next generations. Thank you very much and wish you all the best and have a nice day.